Inc.com.
New and dramatic evidence of former President Trump's scheme to overturn the election. Former acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen testified over the weekend to the Senate Judiciary Committee about Trump's pressure campaign on the Justice Department. Judiciary Chairman Dick Durbin said what Rosen revealed was frightening.
Just how directly, personally involved the president was, the pressure he was putting on Jeffrey Rosen, it was real. Very real, and it was very specific. This president's not subtle when he wants something.
Joining us now, CNN political analyst David Gregory and CNN political commentator Amanda Carpenter. Amanda, you know, I think maybe the number one takeaway from this is Jeffrey Rosen is talking. The former acting attorney general who was running the Justice Department in the days before the insurrection isn't just talking, but like wanting to talk, wanting to give information at this point. What's the significance about what we're hearing?
I think it just shows how dedicated Donald Trump was to this effort. And if you don't mind me looking back a little bit, I'm a little bit frustrated because this would have been very relevant information during the second impeachment trial. Clearly, you had people who are willing to talk, and maybe they just needed the cover of the DOJ ruling saying that they would be free to do so. But I mean, the second impeachment was really, this is the same as the first. It's Donald Trump abusing official resources in order to get his way politically and stop Joe Biden from becoming president. I mean, it's clearly a pattern here. And so I am very thankful that we have a January 6th select committee, because I've got to believe there are many more people like Rosen. So once they have the legal, clear pathway in order to talk, they're going to sing like canaries.
You know, David, I think that this isn't registering for a lot of Americans just how serious this is. And I wonder, you know, what do you think that means? Is that problematic?
Well, I think Amanda's point is what's so important is that the reason this committee is so important, the reason a report is so important, is that we have a full view that is as mildly partisan as it can be in this environment to spell out exactly the lengths to which Donald Trump was willing to subvert the law and our democracy to try to stay in office. That needs to become clear because he's still a political force and people can't shy away from what the facts are about not only January 6th, but this entire period. And to Amanda's point, the reason why Jeffrey Rosen was willing to talk is that it was painfully clear at that point. The Attorney General had already left saying there was no evidence of irregularities in the election at all. It was painfully clear that Trump was done, and yet he was still fighting. It was only then that people would step up and talk and say no more. That was not true in the second impeachment because people still feared Donald Trump and feared his political impact. So that's the key point. The other one is I think we have to also look at these horrible events and realize that our institution held. I mean, here is somebody who's put in an acting capacity at the Justice Department and still has the guts to say, you know what, there's something bigger than me. That's this role that I'm in at the Justice Department, and our government has to work with integrity. And he's stepping forward to say exactly what happened.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
To that point, you know, there's a lot of talk about how partisan this committee supposedly is. It's not, because there's Republicans on it. But I think it's important to note and emphasize the fact that the people who will be testifying with the most important information serve Donald Trump, right? There's going to be many Republicans, I think, who are willing to talk, particularly like younger staffers who don't want this to ruin their careers forever, who have information, who want to give it, as long as they're given a pathway to do so. And they will be Republicans.
What I was going to say to Jeffrey's point, I'm sorry to interrupt, is sort of what John Bolton was telling us in a spirited discussion last week. Is his main takeaway here is that Donald Trump couldn't pull off the coup, right? The big thing is there is the institutions held, and Trump was too ham-handed to make it happen. That's sort of the glass half full interpretation of the insurrection. There's also the glass half empty, which is the guy tried, right? He tried. He had Jeffrey Clark, the number 3 in the Justice Department, trying really hard to overthrow the government. So what are we supposed to feel? We're supposed to feel good it didn't work, or should we be terrified that it really got very close, David?
I think we can feel both. I think we have to feel both because I think the importance of this committee is to spell out how dedicated Trump was to pulling this off. And what Durbin himself has described as really the process of an attempted coup. But we also have to be relieved that the institutions did hold, that there were members of his own party who were breaking from this particular path by Trump, that the military was resisting, and that even a kind of scaled down Justice Department had figures who were willing to step up and say, no, we can't do this, even under threat that he would be removed. Again, the time in which it happened was important because I think there were enough people like a Jeffrey Rosen who recognized this is out of control and he doesn't have the authority to do this, and he could withstand the pressure that others had not before.